So this is my new loom that I purchased, and it's the KB knitting board sock loom, and it's the plastic one with the finer gauge. And the great thing about this is it has a rubber band kind of system, which makes it easier to really fine tune the adjustment to get a perfect fit for a sock for someone. And so what I have shown you in the previous photographs is that you can take a piece of paper and trace somebody's foot out, then cut the traced foot out, and this gives you an idea of the length you need for your sock as well as the width you need for the ball of the foot. So what I want to do is I want to stick this up in here at the widest part and then stretch it and slide it into place, and it can go just a little bit more. And there you have it, and it fits in there nicely. You can do this with any size foot. I did it with my son's and it worked out just fine. And typically you might think to start at the toe. My personal preference here, looking at socks you purchase from the store, they are done with the ankle having a little fold over, which allows more of elasticity that doesn't have a weird cast off and easier to put the sock on. So how I'm going to show this is to do it like you're doing the brim of a hat, where you fold the cast on back onto the loops. And so we're going to kind of go about that first. So we're going to go from the ankle to the heel to the toe, and that way we have a process in which we're doing the socks. And I'm going to show a real basic sock. You can change this into color works and the whole 9 yards, but this is just a basic guide as to how to go about using these nice fine gauge looms to make socks. And I've already had a mental workout for gloves and other things. So let's get started. I'm using a Lions brand worsted yarn. You can use a number 4 or number 3 yarn. This means you can use a real narrow yarn where you typically can't do it with a wider gauge. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do a half knot, and I make the corner my starting point, but I'm going to put this half knot a little further ahead. This is my personal preference. There are others who do this a little differently. Now, I'm going to E-wrap because it's a nice loose cast on. So I'm going to E-wrap. I'm going to skip that peg directly beside that line up on each side. So I'm going to skip those very corner pegs. And the reason being is when you go to start tossing the loops over, because I'm going to do a flat knit to show you how to do these socks, it becomes a real pain to not catch the next or anywhere near that corner. It just becomes a pain and it wants to catch. So I'm going to skip those 4 corners. So what I'm going to do is skip that first one and just start E-wrapping. And you want to do this nice and loose. You're just not even pulling on the yarn. You're just kind of lightly wrapping it around. Remember, we're skipping that corner peg. Skip that corner peg. Now I'm doing this in a left-handed manner. You can do this in a right-handed manner. It's completely and entirely up to you. skip that corner. And I can tell you right now, the hardest pegs to toss or do anything with are going to be these. But I'm going to show you what the hook looks like that it comes with, and I can see why it comes with this hook. A lot of hooks are interchangeable, but I find that there's a reason that they provide this particular hook. Okay. We've now E-wrapped all our pegs. You're going to just push them down. Okay, and we're ready to start a flat knit. Now, the hook for this is interesting. Most of the time, the hook is straight out. This one has a curve at the end, just the very tip has a bend. And this is going to be really useful on these pegs here. So at this point, what you want to start doing is you want to start a flat knit. You can do a regular knit if you choose, where you pull it up and through and over, but I prefer to just toss that bottom loop over, and I pull it up and then I pull it back. And when you pull that loop back, you loosen that up in front. As you can see, it'll pull it back some. And this helps keep that flat knit loose enough to where you can always work with it. And so you're going to work like you do most everything else. It just is, it's a finer gauge is all you're doing. So what you're going to do is you're going to continue that all the way around, and you're going to keep doing that, and you're going to do that for 20 rows. And I find that 20 rows, no matter if you're doing a toddler or a full-grown adult, is going to give you probably about, I would say, ½ an inch fold, which gives you a nice clean top. So go ahead and pause the video and do a total of 20 rows, and then I will pull it back up and show you how to go about putting the cast on back onto the pegs to do that nice little cuff area that'll give it a nice clean look. And so we'll go from there. So go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I have completed 20 rows, as you can see, and now we're going to do the nice little ridge at the top of the sock. And what you want to do, this is where you want to find your original tail. So go ahead and kind of fold this up like this. And there is your original tail. So hopefully I can get this clear enough for you to see. So you find the original tail, and you see that one's going to go on your very first one. So that's your very first one right there. You're going to put it on your first peg. And I'm not going to say that this is going to be fast and easy, but it does do a nice effect. So what you want to do now is find your next loop, which is going to be that one. You can kind of see it's going to be that one. So you're going to put that one on next. And then you're going to see the next one. You're going to put that one on next. There's your next one. Put that one on. And your next one. Put that one on. and that one, and that one. Make sure you get the next one. Don't skip, or you're going to be short when you get to over here. So make sure you don't miss any of the original loops. Also, because this loom tends to going to require a lot more rows than the others, I suggest you get a row counter. Row counter looks something like this, and it just turns. And so you're going to want to get a row counter when you start doing projects like this that are going to require a lot of rows, up to 50, maybe even 60. So I would suggest getting you a row counter so that you can keep up with where you're at. And after you get done folding this all the way around, you'll want to toss the bottom loop over the top. And you'll want to go back and do that all the way around after you get all your loops back on. And you'll go back and do that all the way around. And then you'll continue to continue knitting straight rows. And here's where it's a personal preference. It's up to you how many rows you do. If you're making a sock for somebody who likes a longer cuff area, then you'll want to do more rows. If you have a person that doesn't want much of one, then you just kind of figure out how you can get a short cuff on the sock or a longer cuff on the sock. And this is pure preference, so it's however many rows you want. The person I'm making this for likes a longer cuff, so I'm probably going to end up doing 40 or 50 rows after I get this section done. So I'm going to probably end up doing 40 or 50 rows. After I complete that, then we're going to do the heel. So go ahead and complete putting your loops back on your pegs, and then toss the bottom loops over. Complete putting the loops back onto your pegs. Toss the bottom loops over. Then continue knitting straight like you had been, however many rows, however long or short you want your cuff. And then we'll come back to it and I'll show you how to gauge how to go about doing the heel, which we're going to need our piece of paper with our general shape of our heel. So go ahead and complete this section and we will be working on the heel next. Okay, we've now finished our cuff area. As you can see, I've gotten my 40 rows in for my longer cuff. And next we're to the heel of our pattern. And here's where you're going to need to pick up your cutout. This is going to be great. This is going to help you make sure that the sock fits more like a glove. So we have a size of the heel, okay, and we want to shove the mold down up in there, and we want to find out how many pegs it's going to take to do the heel area. And so we are at the very end where the curve starts. And what you want to do is count how many pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. So it takes 12 pegs for the heel. Now this is the area where you're not going to wrap and turn. So you've got to figure out how many pegs is across one side and then you need to evenly divide the wrap and turns on each side so that you have 12 pegs in between the wrap and turns that are just normal. They don't have any wrap or turns, they're just straight. So let's go in and figure out how to evenly distribute that. Now, if I recall correctly on my calculations on this, it should be 25 on this side, but let's make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay, well, it's 23. And what we can do to make this a little easier is we can make it 11 pegs rather than 12 to have the heel. And because we have 23, what we can do is we can take it down to 22, and we know we're going to have a middle peg in here. We're going to divide that in half, and when we divide that in half, it's going to be 11. So we're going to count in 11 on one side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And if you move over just one, that's your middle peg. So because we want to do 11, there's 1, and we're going to count 5 out on one side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put that there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that we have those marked, you want to figure out how many wrap and turns you're going to need to do. And there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's looking like 6 on the ends are going to be wrapped and turned. So the best way to start about this is you're going to knit all the way across to your end. And I suggest doing it on the lengthwise, just the longer way on doing this with the heel. That way you're not having to work around a curve. So that makes it a little easier. So we're going to knit all the way to our end. Okay, we're going to stop just before that last peg. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the yarn behind, like we're going to E-wrap it, bring it up front, and we're not going to toss that bottom loop over there. So we've just done a wrap and turn. That's a wrap and turn, and then we're going to knit back to the other side. Okay, now we're to the other side with just before the last peg, and we're going to wrap it like we're going to do an E-wrap, pull it from the back to the front, and then we're going to go back all the way, and we're going to knit all the way just before just the peg before the last wrap and turn, so that we can wrap and turn it. So go ahead and start knitting your way back. Okay, and as you can see, we are at the peg before the last wrap and turn. So bring the yarn behind that peg and wrap it over the front, and now you should have 2 wrap and turns on the end. So there's 2 wrap and turns on the end. Now, next thing we want to do is go back and do the same thing and keep going back and forth, wrap and turning the next peg, until you have 6 on each side with a wrap and turn. So go ahead and pause the video and get your wrap and turns down to however many pegs that you need in the middle with no wrap and turn. And I'll show you the example of mine with just 11. So go ahead and pause the video and do however many wrap and turns you need to do to get to this section. So go ahead and pause and do that. Okay, now we have just completed our wrap and turn sections, and I'm going to show you what I mean. As you can see, there's a wrap and turn, there's a wrap and turn, which is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there's a single, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I have 11 singles, and then back to my wrap and turn. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you should have 6 wrap and turns on one side, 6 on the other, and I have 11 in the middle. Now this depends on if you have a smaller heel. It will depend on how many wraps and turns are on each side. You could have more, you could have less, depending on the size that you're doing. But for me, on this project and the size of the person's heel that I'm working with, I have 11 single loops in between 6 pegs on each side with wraps and turns. Now that we've completed half the heel, we're going to go in and work the other half the heel up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back the direction we came, and then we're going to add back in that wrap and turn peg. And here we go to add that wrap and turn peg in. So there's the first loop tossed over, and there's the second loop tossed over. Now we're going to go back the direction we came, and we're going to add another wrap and turn peg in. Okay, so there we go. We tossed the first loop over, then the second, and then we're going to go back the direction we came and add the next wrap and turn, go back, add the next, until you have no more wrap and turns to toss over, which this should be your last one. I'm pretty sure this one should be your last one. If not, this one will be. But go ahead and finish off the heel, removing the wrap and turns one by one, back and forth on each row, and then we will go from there, and I'll explain how to go about working the next section of the sock. So go ahead and pause the video and complete your heel section. Okay, we've completed our heel, and you see that right there. And if you want to check the heel section out with your guide, you can. And as you can see, mine lines up. Now if you're going through and you're saying, darn, this looks big, keep in mind that the socks that you buy from the store have a lot of stretch to them. And when you're using these yarns that are for home use, they're not going to have the same stretch to them, which is the reason why the sock's going to look bigger. But it's going to fit the foot. So that's the reason why actually cutting out a mold of the person you're making socks for is actually really helpful in getting the size that you need exactly for them. But there's our heel, which is done. And next we're going to work the actual foot. And yes, we did end on the very first wrap and turn over here. So we did end here, and what you're going to do is you're just going to finish the row up. So just go all the way around and get back to your starting point, which is right here on the corner. At this point, what you want to do is pretty much you're right here. If not, you're darn close. And what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to knit however long your foot is at this point, and you can measure it. It gets up to a certain point. Because it's such a fine gauge, it's easy to measure if you have the right amount or not. So this is going to be very dependent on who you're making the sock for, and you'll need to make sure that you can measure it out and make sure that it's exact to the cutout you have. So what I would suggest doing is taking a counter and count each row you do until you get up to the full length of the foot like you need to, and write that number down, because you have to make a second sock, and it's just easier to remember when you write it down how many rows you need to do rather than just trying to keep it in your head. So I would suggest using a counter while you're working. Write it down so that you know what you're doing with the second sock. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and complete the foot area, just knitting around like you had been doing, like with the cuff. And then I will come back and show you how to do a cast off on the end of the foot where the foot should end. So go ahead and do that, and we'll get back to the cast off. Okay, I have completed the bottom part of my foot, and I'm going to show you how you know whether you've done enough rows or not. So you take your paper, which mine's a stiff paper, so it shouldn't be hard, and I would suggest doing it on stiff paper, and you can keep family members' feet on file so that if you make their socks, you can do this every time. Okay, and you find it to the base, as you can see where my finger is. You'll feel the paper to the base of the heel, and it should fit perfectly. And then what you do is you pull it just slightly, and you see that it goes behind. And that's how you know when you've had enough rows. So we have enough rows at this point when our top just barely touches the top of the pegs, as you can see. If you can see that. It's right in there. Okay, so when we know we've done that, go ahead and write how many rows it took to do the base of the foot, the actual foot length, and then you should have your completed pattern. And now we're going to cast off our sock, and this is just going to be a preference for me. So I'm only going to do half the row to get myself back to where I need to be, because we want to be right smack dab on the side of the foot to start our cast off. Naturally do that, but next we need to find out where's the halfway point here. So because I've got the short end, it's easy to just go doop, doop, doop. So you're going to go in 4 on the side to get your halfway point. Now that we're at our halfway point, cut a very long tail. Go ahead and thread your needle. And at this point, what you want to do, and we'll push those up, you're going to go back and forth putting your needle through the loops until you have it all the way across. So here's what you want to do. You want to send it up through the bottom of the very next peg. So send your needle up can be a challenge at first. Okay. Then go from top to bottom to the next peg. Back. Then go over to the next peg beside that one. Go up from the bottom like a pearl. Then come to the other side, and if this helps, go ahead and take the loops off that you've done. Okay, then you're going to go back over here and you're going to go through the top. Take that off. Then go through the bottom of the next peg on that side. Take it off. Then go through the top end on the next one. Take it off. Then go through the bottom. Take it off. And go through the top. Take it off. And then you're going to go from side to side. Then you're going to go from the bottom. Take that one off. Then you're going to go to the other side and go through the top. You can take it off and then go through the bottom, the next peg, take it off, go to the opposite side, go through the top, go to the other side, go through the bottom. Since you're doing the side to side, you'll know how to keep up with this a little easier than on the ends. You'll know that you go up under on this side and go up over on this side. And you want to do that all the way over to the other end. And so we're going to kind of do a flash forward to over here, and I'll show you how to finish that up. Okay, we have done all the way to the other end, the end that is, to me, always trouble. And so, remember, this side we went under, this side we went over, so if you can do it, you may want to do it this way. Lift that up. Stick the needle under. Lift that one up, stick the needle over. Just trying to make life easier. Stick that up. Shove it on the underside, like that. Pull that up. Stick it through that way. way. Pick that up. Stick it through that way. Pick that up. Make sure you don't get anything else in there. And one more. And stick it through the top. Okay. So it's not tightened at this point, and if you were not using so many pegs to do this, I'd say you could just pull the end, but I would suggest going in and pulling sections to get to this end. So start with the opposite end and pull sections. Okay, and you just keep pulling those sections until you get to the other side. And as you can see, that provides a really nice smooth end. Now there are other options to casting off on socks. This is just my preference. If you don't want to do the Kitchener stitch, which means bringing out your double point needles and stuff, this is an easy way of going about it while having still a fairly smooth end, as you can see, like that. Now at this point we want to just close off the sock, and if you want it a little tighter, you can just slightly tug on it to get a little bit more snug. And then you want to tie it off. You want to snip the end, and then you'll get a crochet hook and pull that in through there, and then you're done. And this is your sock. This is a real basic pattern design, but it's customized to the foot, so it should fit exactly as your mold. And if we want to check this, find where our end is right there. And push it into place, and it should fit. And it does. So this should be customized fit, and that's how you make any sock fit any person to an exact fit to the width of their foot and the narrowness of their heel and the height that they want. And there you have it. and it works. This is my second one doing, and it works perfectly. So that's how you do it. You draw the foot, you cut it out, you gauge how much you need on your loom by adjusting it to fitting that in there, and then you do 20 rows no matter what you're doing, small, medium, or large, to get your nice fold, to get you a nice top that still stretches. Then you do however many rows you want your cuff to be. Then you do your heel, and you line your heel up to fit whatever that is in between. Then after you do your heel with your wrap and turn, you do however many rows you need to do to, when it stretches, it lines up from heel to toe like that. And then you cast off and you make 2 of them, and that's it. That's how you do it. A simple basic sock pattern that you can make specifically for anyone. And that's it.